give me an idea what pitching line you're expecting from him on Wednesday.
Yes, sir. There she goes.
Hello and welcome to episode 122 of Section 138. I'm your host, Mark Colley, as always, joined by Bryson and Jacob. It's been a rough week. How are you guys?
It's been it hasn't been the greatest week exactly, but I'm doing okay myself. But it's been a very disappointing and frustrating week while watching this baseball team play.
That's for sure. They lost 4 in a row since the last time we talked. They're now on a 6-game losing streak. They've lost 4 blown games in a row. 5 blown games in a row, going back to the final game of the Red Sox series. 9-7 extra innings loss on Friday, 3-1 loss on Saturday. Sunday, they walked 3 with the bases loaded to lose 6-4 in the 9th inning. And then Monday, of course, yesterday, 14-8 loss in 11 innings. It's been pretty brutal. How are you, Jacob?
Well, considering that the team is losing, I'm also not doing well. I guess it could be worse. Maybe if I want to be a little bit optimistic, but no, it's a rough time for Blue Jays fans right now, myself included.
At least no one's getting injured now. I guess that's how it could be worse. I mean, the team is staying at the same level of health as they have been. It's just they aren't scoring and they aren't keeping the lead. And anyways, just a fair warning to everyone listening. We're recording this podcast at 8 a.m. So if we say anything that doesn't totally make sense, we'll blame it on that. We don't normally record this early. In life, I like to start with the bad news and go to the good news. But everyone's just talking about the good news this week, so we'll start with it. Alek Manoah. This is, I guess, officially our last segment of Alek Manoah Watch. The Blue Jays have called him up from AAA. He'll be making his major league debut in a start tomorrow, Wednesday, against the New York Yankees. I was blown away by this. I did not expect him up this early. Going back to the start of the season, going back to spring training, didn't expect him. But even, 4 days ago when we last recorded, I said he wouldn't be up until July. So clearly I was wrong on that. Bryson was the closest with his updated guess because he said June 1st. I don't know if we count that as winning because Jacob was the closest.
We count it.
At first. Well, of course you're going to count it. Jacob was the closest at first. I don't know. We can let people listening decide, but either way, I lose. That's the brunt of it. And so what are your guys' thoughts on calling Manoah up? I'm shocked. I did not expect this.
I was shocked too. I believe the first tweet that I saw was from Ken Rosenthal, and it was just kind of a random Blue Jays are calling up Alek Manoah, and I almost I was with my family and I accidentally blurted out a few choice words as just kind of surprised, and I was like, "Okay, guys, relax. Like it's okay." But it was fantastic. I think the Blue Jays need pitching. They're getting some pitching, and it's exciting. It had the news I think dropped just before the Leaf game, so that was a nice transition from the bad loss into the good game that I was expecting. But yeah, I'm excited to see Alek Manoah. I've been excited since we've started this and really since spring training, and we really seen him come into his own. And especially considering he faced the opening day lineup really for the New York Yankees, and that's who he'll be facing tomorrow. That's even more exciting considering he's seen this lineup, and I think that this could be a very interesting debut. I do also want to kind of settle or manage my expectations because immediately I thought, wow, what if he gets a no-hitter in his debut? I know that's not happening, but it's going to be exciting, and this is just another one of those top prospects that's coming up. And I think Blue Jays fans are kind of spoiled with all these prospects that have been coming up the last couple of years. But yeah, it's a fantastic time, and let's hope he can really prove that he's a staple in this rotation.
Yeah, I'm not shocked at all because I had a feeling this was going to happen. Now, however, I will admit I was never going to go before June, but the fact that he is up before June, I'm not surprised whatsoever. I'm not. I just had the feeling that all signs are pointing to this. Each time he kept pitching, it just kept feeling like the chances of him coming up were going to increase. And a lot of people too are wondering, was it really smart to maybe, or I guess potentially start him against New York? A lot of people were making that pretty much bringing that up and saying how it's probably not a good idea And then after the Jays are in New York, I believe they go right to Cleveland. So a lot of people were targeting that one of those dates in Cleveland, which is why I centered my prediction around June 1. But the fact of the matter is, it's a mixture of a lot of things. It's a mixture of obviously his performance. We can't take anything away from that. Mark, you saw him firsthand, a 0.5 ERA and 3 starts with AAA. That's pretty spectacular, and that's hard to keep down in the minor leagues. It really is when you look at it. So the fact that the Jays were tempted, when you look at this, you understand why. I understand why. A lot of people still don't. A lot of people are making the argument that the fact that we're relying on these prospects to help our pitching depth is kind of concerning. And I mean, when you look at it, it's a little bit of a risk, obviously, due to the fact that there's no MLB experience still. Manoah still has not pitched a lot of innings in the minor leagues. Obviously, we know that as well. So that's, I guess, one of the cons of it. A lot of people are bringing that up. But on the other hand, a lot of people are saying how this is a massive boost for the team. Just the fact of the matter is that he is a better option than someone like Ross Stripling, somebody like Anthony Kay. So I'm one of those people that are all for it, because if he's performing like the way he has been in Buffalo or whatever with AAA, I don't see how you keep him in the minor leagues for that long. And regardless too, this pitching after such a great start in terms of the starters and relievers, bullpen ERA, everything like that, the past 7 days, it's been a mess to say it, I guess, in the best way possible. And the best part about this sport is how quickly things can change in a week. The Jays, when you got to look at it now, they're 500. The last time we recorded, Mark, we mentioned it right before this 4-game series against the Rays. And I don't know about you guys, but each time we play the Rays now, I get even more mad at the team because of how difficult they are for this team, and how, regardless of where they play, it could be Toronto, Dunedin, Buffalo, the Trop, they just seem to be giving the Jays a hard time no matter what. So I don't know if you guys agree with that. I just personally keep disliking the Rays even more each time they play each other. But when I want to look at the team ERA itself, the last 7 days, the team ERA as a whole has an ERA of 5. And for a team that was leading the bullpen ERA, or tied for first for the longest time, I guess throughout the month of April and the early parts of May, that's obviously a little bit concerning. A lot of it could be centered around the bullpen for sure. But the fact of the matter is I think, Jacob, you were saying too, you were calling it, I think, within the next couple of weeks. I think I was a little bit behind you guys. Mark, I don't remember your prediction for sure, but I think Jacob was the first one to mention that this bullpen was eventually going to run on fumes before we hit the end of the month. And I'm surprised it happened this early. All right, maybe I am, but in a way I'm not, because when you look at this as well, the starters still aren't going deep in games. Anthony Kay, you want to bring him up since he's the one that's now being booted from the rotation for Alek Manoah. He only went 4 innings a couple days ago in the opening game against Tampa on the Friday. And this bullpen is pitching every single day. There's no, the thing this team needs right now is a complete game. But unfortunately, I don't think they're ever going to get that, because the only time this bullpen gets an off day is when they actually don't have a game, when they have an off day. And no matter who you are in that bullpen, you're being used every single game. It's like an automatic for all of us. You two know for sure. You guys know the best. Everyone else, every time you're watching this team play, that they're going to be going to the bullpen within the 5th or the 6th at least. And sometimes it's a little bit concerning. And obviously it's been forced in their hand recently. Charlie Montoyo has been pretty much forcing out the starting rotation to go deeper into ball games, and it's not always working out. So where Alek Manoah fits in is that you're going to need Alek Manoah to give you innings. And this is a tough ask for Alek Manoah. You're throwing him right into the fire. You're throwing him right in Yankee Stadium, right against the Yankees, who are red hot right now as well. And the Jays, on the other hand, have been struggling. They're back to 500. They had a horrible weekend, as we know. And for Alek Manoah, obviously, I don't know how long of a leash he has or an opportunity. I would think it's a pretty decent one, because you don't obviously make this move now and then send him back down a couple days later. I feel like he's here for at least a little bit. So he's going to have a tough ask to, I guess, make his debut at Yankee Stadium. But hey, he's a better option than what they have so far, and I'm willing to give him the opportunity to do so. But the fact that this pitching's been lacking the last week is obviously concerning, and the Jays are hoping that this move pans out and kind of steers them back in the right direction, and hopefully it does.
Yeah, bringing up Alek Manoah is obviously going to help with the bullpen issues. If only for the fact that you're not going to have to rely on someone like Trent Thornton or someone like Ross Stripling for one of the spots, although Ross Stripling was fantastic in yesterday's game. But it's certainly going to help the team. And for people who are saying this is a desperation move, like, to some extent it is. But at the same time, like, to your point, Bryson, pitching depth is meant for you to call up pitchers and to use it. So if you have this guy in your system that is doing exceedingly well, why not call him up? Why not use him at the major league level? Like people are saying, like, why waste those pitches that he's going to throw this year in AAA? Why waste what he's doing right now in AAA instead of calling him up to the majors, getting what he is worth in the majors? And maybe he's on a workload count. He's only thrown 35 professional innings, which is the most remarkable part of this to me, that he's only made like six professional starts before coming to the majors. And yes, he missed a year in 2020 and he had a partial season in 2019 and then coming back in 2021. But it's remarkable, and I think the workload thing is going to be the most interesting part of this. Does he have a cap on the amount of innings he can pitch? He's at 35 right now for his professional career, even less for just this season. Does he have a cap at 100? Does he have a cap at 120? Where do you put the limit on him, especially because he hasn't faced this amount of work so far in his career, either professionally or in college? He's never had to throw this much.
I'm not entirely sure because I'm thinking so it's towards the end of May, so there's about 4 months left in the season. I'm predicting that he will if he's doing well, I think he might have a shot at staying in the rotation for maybe the rest of the season because like the thing is when we go back to the Nate Pearson thing, I thought he should have stayed in the majors coming back from injury even if he came back a little too early. So with Alek Manoah, I think if he's doing well, then there's absolutely no need to take him out or when I say take him out, I mean put him down into the minors, but even more around the major league team. If you want to maybe put him in the bullpen as an opener, I don't totally agree with that. But if you say you want to do that, that's an option. But for innings specifically, I'm not entirely sure. I think we need to see Alek Manoah, and again, I'll go back to that point. If he is doing well, then I don't see why you take him out. Like if he yes, he's very, very unproven right now, but if he can prove that, hey, I can take on the New York Yankees, I can take on he's not going to start in Cleveland, but if he can take on any of these other opponents that are good opponents, like if he can do that, then I say let him go until he proves otherwise. And so that's why I think we can kind of come back to that and say, you know what, if he gives the Blue Jays innings and he gives them quality innings, then I say just roll with it until until otherwise he proves that he can't.
Exactly. And another reason why he's coming up, and obviously this is probably for, I would say, the long haul rather than a brief call up, is they could have easily went to somebody else in AAA for like a start or two, or even keep Anthony K. So that's why the Jays are fully committed with this move. And if you were to ask any of us back in, or even I guess the front office, because obviously our answer if you go back, I guess, a month about our chances of him being up this year, we all pretty much said close to 0%. But the front office, what I wonder is how much they knew or what the possibility was for them to call up Alek Manoah this year. I mean, obviously for us, we said 0%, like what I just mentioned. But for the front office, what were they thinking back in April, right after spring training? That's what I want to know. We'll obviously never find out, but that's something that I'll always kind of look back on and say, what were they thinking? Was this really part of the plan? And it definitely, part of it is, I agree. Whoever mentioned it, Mark, you mentioned it, from whoever said it, or the people saying it, I do think it's part of desperation move for sure. And when you look at it now, is when you, and Jacob, you brought it up, Nate Pearson. So where Nate Pearson fits is that you could potentially have a rotation, I would say, within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I guess, at least, that you have both Alek Manoah and Nate Pearson in there. So Nate Pearson, your organization's number one prospect,
Well,
and
and Thomas Hatch there too. I think he's
yep, he's on
getting
a
ready.
rehab assignment. And Alek Manoah, the team's fifth prospect, I believe. I think he's 5 on the pipeline charts for the Jays. So there you go. And I mean, with the lack of pitching depth, we brought this up heading into the year. Is that a little bit of a risk or a little bit of a concern for you guys? It's a lot to put on these young prospects for sure. But I know Pearson was supposed to be there to begin with. But even with Alek Manoah, it's exciting. But at the same time, you wonder, this could either go really good, and there's a chance this could also go really bad. But I think the Jays are kind of out of answers at this point internally with their pitching, unless they go and explore possibilities within the next couple of months to trade for people. I think that's still inevitable. But right now, I think they're kind of running out of options. And I think that they got to obviously focus towards these new prospects to be called up and help them, because they really are in need of this. And obviously Ross Stripling is still slated in the rotation for now. I don't know how many more starts he made, but of course yesterday he did look really good, and you got to give it to him there. I think it was 7 or 8 shutout innings or close to that coming out of the bullpen after Trent Thornton opened things up in the first. Now, should Ross Stripling have started that game? I'll save that for the Charlie Montoyo talk in a little bit. But either way, Stripling looked good, but I still think we are kind of waiting on Pearson to eventually come back, and then Ross Stripling can return to that bulk guy in the bullpen. And that would actually be a big boost for the bullpen, because obviously he would be a somewhat fresh arm for the bullpen itself. And he can pitch deep into games. We saw that yesterday. So I feel like at the same time, as much as Stripling is, I mean, if this continues, if he's going to be pitching better than what he is or what he has been, I've moved to the bullpen as something that they're definitely going to be favoring to. And that's why Nate Pearson's got to be pitching well fast in AAA so he can come back as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. I definitely want to know what the mindset of the Blue Jays was before this season, because we were saying before this season, if Alek Manoah makes it to the majors before September, the Blue Jays are in a very bad spot. Like, they're only doing it because they have no other options. But here we are in May, and the Blue Jays are calling Alek Manoah up. I think it's very different from where we were a couple months ago, because he started the season in AAA. None of us expected that, because he had before this season, I think it was like 17 professional innings. So no one expected him to jump from low A to AAA in the matter of one season without pitching anywhere in between, just at the alternate site. So that kind of changed the mindset a lot. That makes it less of a surprise that he's here this early, but it's still definitely very, very shocking.
Well, Mark, you said the only way he comes up is if the Blue Jays are in a bad spot, and they kind of are in a bad spot just a little earlier.
Yeah.
No, but
in a way, we are right about that part, because they obviously are in a pretty rough spot right now.
Yeah, they're kind of desperate for pitching, but yeah, I'm not really sure. I think the plan was, going back to what you guys said, I think the plan was to kind of have him come up eventually, even though we all as fans didn't know. Obviously, I think the mindset of the management is very different from fans. They obviously know things that we don't, and I think eventually I think if he had professional experience in 2020, he would have been up in 2021 for opening day. They just wanted to see if he truly was ready to come up, and clearly he is. And now I think that he has a shot to really make a name for himself very early on in his career.
Well, I disagree with that. I don't think he would have been up for opening day because service time issues.
I
think it's very
yeah.
I think it's
I
very
always
convenient.
I was going to mention that, but
I always forget
that they
about that.
waited until, you
Mhm.
know, like whatever the normal day is, April 30th, May 1st, to make sure that the service time doesn't come into effect.
Either way, though, in a way, Jacob is right, because obviously without that, if that wasn't a thing, he probably, like the same thing with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They're on the opening day roster, but yeah, either way, it does make sense.
All right. Any final thoughts on Manoah before we turn to the less exciting topic for today?
Yes. Quickly, this is going to be hard to do, but give me an idea what pitching line you're expecting from him on Wednesday, including runs, innings. Like, do you think he goes deep? Do you think there's a limit, like you guys said? Give me your prediction for his pitching line Wednesday. We were predicting when he was going to get called up, so why not?
Yeah. Mark, you want to go, or you want me to?
Well, Mark's thinking. So,
yeah, okay. I don't think he's going deep into the game. I'll say 6 innings at max.
That's deep for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, well, yeah, relatively.
That's pretty good for them. Yeah.
I'm thinking 6 innings, 6 hits, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, and a walk. I know it's very specific, but I'm thinking he's gonna make a pretty decent appearance in his
so you're expecting
debut.
a solid debut.
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because like he
I was
faced
gonna
the Yankees
say
lineup too.
What's Mark thinking?
I was gonna say 6 innings, 2 earned runs, but now Jacob said that, so
okay.
I can't say that. I'll say.
I mean,
I'll still say 6 innings though, because that's kind of what he's hovered around in AAA.
Yeah.
I'll bump it down to 1 earned run just to be a little bit more cheerful, and then I guess in terms of hit, I'll go with 5 hits, 1 walk. I'll say 10 strikeouts.
Ooh.
Okay. Yeah. See, I was thinking 6 innings too. We're all kind of thinking the exact same thing, and I think that's right. I'm gonna you're not obviously going to predict him to get lit up, but 1 or 2 runs, maybe. I'm going to say he's probably going to be a little bit nervous. So I wouldn't be surprised if he walks maybe 2 or 3. And I do think he'll strike out at least 7 to 10. I'm expecting a high strikeout rate from him as well. So it'll be exciting. But yeah, too bad this short-lived Alek Manoah segment we had going on is already coming to a close. I think a lot earlier than we all anticipated.
Yeah. Sadly,
Yeah.
my the theme music will no longer be able to use.
One
I'll have
more
to come
time.
up with another segment. Yeah. Okay, so we got to talk about this weekend. We already kind of did. It was probably, I hope, fingers crossed, the worst this season is ever going to get. It's certainly the worst I think we've seen of the Blue Jays over the last 2 years, 2020, 2021. You have that 6-game losing streak at the end of last season, but it's nowhere near as brutal as this streak has been. Being ahead in games, being tied in games, fighting your way back into games, and then just blowing it all the same in the last few innings out of the bullpen, and not taking advantage of some chances on the base paths and extra innings. It's been really, really rough. I feel like I have a very different opinion on this than a lot of Blue Jay fans do. A lot of people are incredibly frustrated, which I am. It's horrible to watch, but I'm not panicking. I'm not overly concerned about this team. I know this team is better than this. 5 days ago, we were talking about this team taking the lead in the AL East. This is still the same team it was 5 days ago. It's just 5 days later, we've seen some of the cracks in the bullpen. Yes, they're not the perfect team we may have envisioned them being 5 days ago, but they're still a pretty good team. They are still the same team they were 5 days ago. And every team goes through rough patches. Like I said, last year, the Blue Jays lost six games in a row in September, and they still managed to fight their way back to a playoff spot. Earlier this year, the Los Angeles Dodgers lost 11 of 14 games. Also earlier this year, the Yankees had one of the worst starts in franchise history. They went 5-10, including a 5-game losing streak. Good teams struggle. Good teams go through rough patches, and that's what the Blue Jays are in right now. Am I concerned about the bullpen? Yes. Do I think the bullpen has its weaknesses and the rotation has its weaknesses and improvements have to be made? Yes. That's what Alek Manoah is for. That's what the trade deadline is for, getting a starter. But at the same time, I know this team is good. It's not time to jump ship. I've seen a lot of fans frustrated and saying this team is never going to be above 500. Fire Montoyo, fire Atkins, fire Shapiro. No, this team is a good team. They're the same team they were 5 days ago. They still have all the same guys. It's just they're a little bit worn down. That's going to change. So that's where I stand on this. I do have more thoughts, but I'll let you guys get your thoughts in first.
Well, first of all, the people that think that the Shapiro and Atkins regime should be fired, I don't know where the heck your brains are at right now. Those two have been working on this team since they came over, and I will defend them until they leave because they've been fantastic. And I'm not going to open that can of worms because I'll get too heated. But anyways, when you look at the Rays series, all 4 of these games were winnable games. The obviously 9-7 loss, 3-1 loss, a 6-4 loss, and a 14-8 loss. So not good results, but there were obviously the Blue Jays, except for the second game, they scored quite a few runs in every single game. So that's a good thing that you can look at. Yes, the bullpen is starting to collapse, but there are still, I think, reasons to be optimistic, even if the results aren't there. And even going back to the Red Sox series, they lost 8-7 and 7-3 in those final 2 games. So yes, it's not perfect. There are still, I think, reasons to be optimistic about this team. Now, there are obviously things that I didn't agree with, and Mark, you and I talked about this after the first game in the series. Charlie Montoyo asking Santiago Espinal to bunt in an extra inning situation, I completely disagreed with. I don't disagree with the bunt as a concept, but in the situation where you have runners on less than 2 outs, excuse me.
Also with 2 strikes on
Yeah,
Espinal.
I was going to say that. Also, with 2 strikes, I don't know how you can even justify a bunt, considering that I saw a stat saying the Blue Jays have actually been unsuccessful in, or only successful in a quarter of the bunts that they've actually done, and it's not very good. So that I don't agree with, but there's still reasons I think outside of this that the team is doing well. they're obviously scoring runs. You saw Simeon almost hit for the cycle. Ross Stripling was fantastic in that third game. You saw Jordan Romano actually hit 100 miles an hour in the game yesterday. And I mean, obviously, we should mention Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He had a fantastic series with 2 games in that last game. So, like, there are. I think this kind of reminds me of earlier in the season when I said that there are individual performances that are obviously people are doing well, but it's not clicking together for a full team performance. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. Yes, there have been 4 or 5 blown games in a row, but there are also some things that haven't been going their way. So we see Santiago Espinal with a few errors in yesterday's game and a few errors in the series. So just overall, it's been a messy series for them. Yes, injuries I think are really catching up to them. A lot of the guys that they have been using, you look at Joel Payamps, Jeremy Beasley's been used quite a bit, Tim Meza, they're being used a lot, and they're starting to not do as well. They're starting to allow some more runs, and that's just kind of where I'm at. I think we do need to be a little bit patient. We need to say, okay, the Tampa Bay Rays, going back to last season, where they were a World Series contender. They were in the World Series. They've been a great team for the past couple seasons. I don't think that I think the Blue Jays, yes, they collapsed and they kind of beat themselves up, but they also got beat by a clearly better team. Now, I mean, it doesn't get any easier now. They're against the New York Yankees, then they're against Cleveland for 3 games after that, 2 games against Miami, and then 3 games against Houston for, I guess, the next week or two. So it doesn't necessarily get too much easier, but I think the team will rebound. I still do think that the Blue Jays are a good team, and when you're a good team, you got to beat the other good team. So let's hope with Thomas Hatch, with Alek Manoah, maybe Nate Pearson's up soon. I know Ryan Barucki, I think, is back. They got Anthony Castro back. Maybe George Springer comes back first week of June. So there's reasons to be optimistic. And I've said that maybe 4 times now, but there are things with this team that are going to get better. I think it just needs time. There have been many things that I disagree with on the managerial side of things, but that's not necessarily on the players. There's only so much that Santiago Espinal can do when he's told, hey, no, you have to bunt. And as Charlie said, we're only playing for 1 run. Highly disagree with that, but that's not on Santiago Espinal. You can't say that that's not his fault at all. So that's just kind of where I'm at. I'm being patient. Yes, it's unfortunate and it's awful to watch you get swept by a division rival, but everybody listening, it'll get better. Just relax. This is game, I think, 46 or something like that. There's still over 100 games left, still 4 months left. So the ship's going to turn around. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, they're what, just over a quarter of the way through the the season so far.
Yeah,
But
46 games in.
and first of all, before I even get started, like, how are we not past the fire Shapiro and Atkins? Like, are we like we're not in 2017 anymore, where that can be the excuse for every single game?
I
Like,
still
whoever,
hear
like, give
people
your head a
say
shake,
it's
whoever
their
that is.
faults
Like,
for.
it's pure idiocy from
Mhm.
whoever's saying that. Like, I'm actually so tired of that, hearing that now. And but anyways, starting from the first game of the series, it's just, you're coming off obviously the Boston game, so the final game from Boston. You're heading in Friday, new series. Everyone's feeling okay. Here we go, right? And it just didn't go too well. It just, I mean, I'm going to be as nice as possible. It didn't go too well. It sucked. And for that opening game, I don't blame Charlie Montoyo at all for the opening game. I was like, back-to-back innings, or from the extra innings from the 11th and 12th inning, or even the 10th inning, there was runners on. There was one inning where the bases were loaded. There was previous inning, there was runners on the corners. The Jays had that opportunity to get 1 run in. And that's the part of the extra innings rule where you look at it, is the home team actually has the advantage, because when you're the away team, you're obviously trying to cash in on as many runs as you can. And you're not really thinking about, okay, you're just playing for the 1 run, get everybody in as much as possible. And then when you're the home team, you can kind of sit back and evaluate. And in the Jays case, all they needed was 1 run. They were just playing for 1 run. And that's why it's so frustrating how they couldn't get 1 run in back-to-back innings. And unfortunately, if you're going to keep giving the Rays opportunities to do so, especially a team that's hot, what do they want? 11 in a row now? I believe that's what it is. And that's the other thing people are failing to realize. And Mark, you mentioned it in our group text yesterday, so I'll give credit to you for that, is they are the hottest, or I think they are the hottest team in baseball throughout the entire league. So that's why nothing worked out. Like anything possible just didn't work out. And when you want to talk about the Espinal situation, I can understand why he was sent to bunt. I'm not saying at first I was kind of okay with it, but the fact that he was still bunting on 2 strikes, yes, I also disagree with that. But the thing too is I don't know what it is with this team. Even going back to years prior, it just feels like they can never get a bunt down when asked. And I know, part of that is maybe not on Espinal, but the other part, it kind of is because he couldn't lay the bunt down. It just feels like they have so much trouble bunting. I don't know why, but I don't know if they even were. I don't even know anymore. But either way, I kind of understood I guess the situation or why they did that, but the fact that you're doing that for 2 innings, or not, sorry, 2 innings for 2 strikes, that's where I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And then of course he fouled out, and we all know the rule with that: when you have 2 strikes and you bunt foul, and that was toast. And then when you want to look at the second game, I guess on the Saturday, the second game was just kind of a area of missed opportunity. They only scored 1 run, they lost 3-1, and Robbie Ray, on the other hand, for the starters, obviously did really well. 7 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts. So that wasn't the concern there. But the Jays were just getting shut down by McClennan. I'll just say it like quickly like that. He had a decent outing, and the Rays bullpen was pretty much perfect. And when you want to compare things, the Jays bullpen this series was the opposite of how Tampa performed. So going deep into the games, that's how the Rays were pretty much capitalizing on their opportunities and winning, because their bullpen was obviously outperforming the Blue Jays one. Now, is the Rays one probably in better condition and better health? Obviously, yes, because they're the hottest team in baseball, and they probably aren't being as used as much as the Jays are. And if they are, it's very short. We know the strategic moves Kevin Cash likes to make. It's not like they're being told to pitch multiple innings every single day. They're kind of doing short appearances, and that's how they kind of run things based off their current strategy. Now, the game on the Sunday, 6-4, pretty much another good start from Hyun-Jin Ryu, 6 2/3, 2 earned runs, 7 strikeouts. And then, of course, the debacle came when you entered late in the innings, and it started with pretty much followed by a good appearance from Rafael Dolis early, Tyler Chatwood, and then Travis Bergen came in, and we all know they lost it late there again. So there's another game that you could have potentially won, where you give up 4 runs in the ninth to the Rays. In the inning prior, you're feeling good. The Jays have a 2-run eighth inning. They pull ahead. They're leading. They are leading again. And that's another win where you look at, and just nothing worked out for them this weekend. And then the game yesterday I want to get into, because I completely disagree with the decision to start Trent Thornton. For obviously Ross Stripling for the entire season hasn't pitched well, but when you want to look at his performance yesterday, there's no reason to believe why the first inning would have been anything different than what he did. He did 7 shutout innings out of the bullpen, 7, 2 hits, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. I know he's been working on a kind of a new delivery or tweaking things with Pete Walker. Clearly, whatever the heck he did worked, but I don't understand why I don't understand. And this goes back to the opener. Why are you overthinking it? And why are you not just rolling with your starting pitcher? If you don't like Ross Stripling as your starting pitcher, that's fine. But why are you making the decision on game day? And why are you only sending him out for 1 minute? I completely disagree with it. But go ahead.
I mean, hindsight's 2020. You look back at his last start against the Red Sox, he gave up 5 runs in the first inning. That was against the top of the lineup. So
it shouldn't be Trent Thornton.
Why not? Trent Thornton was fantastic out of the bullpen.
The opener. I don't like the opener.
He had a 2.7 ERA out of the bullpen. To me, in theory, it works perfectly. Obviously, didn't work in practice. Like, that's just fact. But in theory, Trent Thornton, 2.7 ERA out of the bullpen. Ross Stripling, his last start, he gave up 5 runs in the first inning against the top of the lineup. You roll out Trent Thornton for the first inning or two, get him those at-bats against the top of the lineup. You bring in Ross Stripling after he faces, the 5th spot in the lineup onwards. He gets comfortable with those guys. He settles in. Hopefully he can do what he did in his last start after the first inning. To me, in theory, it's fine. I like it. Obviously, it didn't work out, but I don't disagree with the decision to do it in the first place.
Yeah, like I'm on the completely different ends of it. I don't understand why you're making this decision on game day. And if it's Trent Thornton, it shouldn't have been Trent. It should have been Ross Stripling. And if you're not comfortable with Ross Stripling, then he shouldn't be starting to begin with. That's why I disagreed with it right from the get-go. And before the Jays grab a bat, they're down 5-0. So right away, you're in a hole, and the Jays kind of managed to get their way back into it. And of course, when extra innings, it completely unraveled for them throughout the bullpen with Castro, Pams, Meza. But that goes back to Jacob's point of how they're being overused. But I've said it going back to the winter, and you guys know this, which is why it shouldn't come to a shock to you guys. No, we have less than a minute. Is I disagree with the opener. I think it's a completely overthought strategy that it works sometimes, but a lot of it doesn't work out. And you're taking a chance like that in the first inning, going down 5-0. I disagree with it completely.
Okay, so see, like the thing with the opener is I do think hindsight is a little 2020 on that, and in that I think Trent Thornton was better than his numbers show. The umpire got 2 calls wrong, and I'm going to say that basically every single time we bring this up. Trent Thornton should have been out of that inning twice. There was another error in the inning that should have ended it. So, yes, at the end of the day, Trent Thornton wasn't as good as he needed to be, but it wasn't necessarily on him. And now with Ross Stripling, I'll be honest, I thought he was done in the rotation once guys started to get healthy. I thought he was going to be in the bullpen, but uh, I don't know. I think you could have given him a start. He was fantastic yesterday, and the thought did come in my mind: what would have happened if he did start and he pitched maybe the first until the 7th inning instead of the second to the 8th inning? But I don't know. I think if he was scheduled to start, then switching him to be an opener or Trent Thornton to be an opener and him come out at 10 in the morning is not the right move. If you're going to do that, you do it the day before or the night before at the absolute latest. So I'm not obviously I'm frustrated with the result of the game, but it's not necessarily that I'm thinking it should have been Trent Thornton at the start or anything like that. I think if you're gonna have a game plan, stick with it. If you want Trent Thornton to open or to be a starter or Ross Stripling be a starter, stick with that. But don't do any of this where one guy starts until 2 hours before first pitch or 3 hours. Just go with what you have, and they didn't do that, and unfortunately, it didn't work for the Blue Jays. They were down by over 5 or by 5 before they even came up to bat. They came back, I guess that's a positive, but the opener just it didn't work out for them. And when I think of the opener in general, I don't hate it as a concept. I'm not sure. Like I'm trying to be open to it and really see if I'm trying to weigh the pros and cons of it. And I think that it does have some pros. It gives you, I guess, more flexibility with your bullpen. You can have maybe a bit of a bigger bullpen and you can have a lot of long inning guys. But I'm not sure. I also do like a stereotypical 5 inning or 5 man 6+ inning starting rotation. And it's clear that the Blue Jays aren't using that. And I don't like some of the things that they've done. But yesterday, the only thing that I would have done differently yesterday is not have a change in the starting pitcher 2 hours before first pitch. If you're going to have an opener, sure, whatever, but have that be known going into the game or going into the day, not necessarily right before the game.
Well, from like, we don't know when this decision was made. Who
Oh, yeah.
knows? It might have been, 5 days before, after his last start, the Blue Jays told Ross Stripling, "Look, you're going to have an opener in front of you," and they just didn't announce it because that gives them a strategic advantage. Maybe I'm, pulling at straws a little bit here. I'm trying to find something in there, and maybe the Blue Jays should have made this decision earlier. But bottom line, I think it works in theory. Didn't work in practice. We can't blame the Blue Jays for the fact that, well, we can blame the players on the field, but we can't blame management for the fact that they made an error, that he got squeezed by the umpires. He would have been out of that inning, and the Blue Jays would have won that game if it weren't for those two things. So I I don't disagree with this move at all. I know a lot of people disagree with other stuff from Montoyo, and let's move to that because a lot of people are calling for Montoyo to be fired. The pitchforks are out for him after the bunt decision, after, the opener decision, which I don't know how much that was actually him. But then you look at the bullpen management, some people are upset with that. How upset are you? Do you think we should be watching whether he will be fired or not? Do you think he should be fired or at least be on the hot seat? What are your thoughts?
I think we need to see what the team is like when it's healthy because yes, there are things that I disagree with, and that bunt I absolutely hated, but there's at the end of the day, there's only so many things you can do when your bullpen is collapsing, and there's only so much or so many options that you have, and so that's why I don't have the pitchfork out. Keep that in my closet. I don't think Charlie Montoyo's. I don't think he's going anywhere. Not this season at least. Maybe at the end of the season, if things don't go well, you can reevaluate. But I feel like changing your manager right now is just not the right decision. And I mean, also he's been the guy he's watched a lot of these players really develop into major league hitters or major league players in general. And I don't think that the best idea is to say, oh, at the first sign of adversity, the team's not doing well, we're going to get rid of the manager. Because what does that say about their trust in not only the manager but the players to interact with the manager? So I think the best thing is to keep Montoyo. I think for the end of this season or till the end of this season, I don't think he's going anywhere. If the decision or if the decisions he's making are still very questionable, then you can argue, okay, are we going to move on from him? But I don't think that's likely. I feel like if you're going to invest in a manager, you're not going to get. I think this is his third year with the Blue Jays. You're not going to get 3 seasons out of him and just say, okay, well, there were times where it didn't work, so you're done. I think that's not a very smart decision. And also for the players, like, how are you just supposed to readjust to new managers every couple seasons? That's not the best decision. So I understand the frustrations, and we've all been pretty critical of Charlie Montoyo and his decisions in the past. Every time we say this, we say that it's not all him. There are obviously people behind the scenes making the decisions. So if you truly want to get angry at Charlie Montoyo, well, you also need to get mad at the other people involved in those decisions. But I think we just need to wait a minute, step back, and say, okay, how or how much longer are we willing to give him in terms of this leash? Is he? I think he has till the end of the season, but if this year it doesn't go well, do you say, okay, next season he's on the hot seat? I think I'm getting a little too ahead of myself, but basically the point is I don't think he's going anywhere. And the people that think he is, well, it's inaccurate. He's not going anywhere. He works with this team. Yes, the decisions he makes are questionable, but I feel like that's something that's easier to fix by talking to him and talking with the high performance department and all that than it is to just get a new manager, because that seems like a much more uh, much larger of an investment, both financially, time, and just everything. That just seems way much more difficult. As it's not the right decision.
Yeah, no, he's not going anywhere. I would be very shocked if he's gone next year too. They recently picked up his club option in the spring, and that gives me no reason to believe that he's going anywhere. And this is their guy in terms of Atkins and Shapiro. I don't know who you replace him for either. And obviously, throughout these losses, everybody needs to focus on other things. It's just been an entire week where it's been the worst case scenario, like we mentioned at the beginning of this episode. They're now back at 500. They're back in fourth in the AL East. They're 5.5 games back now, and all hell's breaking loose right now. I mean, there's a few times, yes, where I've disagreed. We go back to last week, and of course, it kind of continues to this week. And but there's also situations where I don't blame him, and that goes back to the game on Friday where they had multiple opportunities in the extra innings to win it, bases loaded or not, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't bring in one run. So I don't know how you blame Charlie Montoyo for that. Of course, the only thing you can pick out, which was the bunt from Santiago Espinal that you guys were talking about, even though, again, I'll say it again, I don't disagree with the decision for him to try it until it got to 2 strikes. I think from 2 strikes, I just feel like he was just pretty much wasting the out. And clearly Espinal didn't seem comfortable bunting to begin with. Why continue to do that and take the risk of being fouled out, which happened? There's another problem where I just don't understand it. And then, of course, throughout the weekend, I don't really know how much he can do in terms of the game on I'm not even going to talk about Saturday, because Saturday was 3-1 and they just couldn't get going offensively. And they didn't really have that chance like they did on Sunday and Monday from yesterday. So on the Sunday game, when they gave up, or when Tampa put 4 runs up in the 9th, I don't understand what he could have done differently with the depleted bullpen who's injured. He already went through Dolis the inning before, which is fine. Chatwood and Bergen didn't settle for the save at all, and we know what happened from that. So that didn't work out. And I don't know, like, do you want Charlie Montoyo to put on a glove and start pitching? Like, I don't understand how you blame him for that with a bullpen that's being overworked every day. And then the only thing I'll pick out from yesterday, again, agree or disagree, is that the opener strategy. I just think it's an overlooked and overthought strategy where it doesn't work out and you're taking chances. And really, when you look at it now, there's so many times where you look at it and say, okay, well, on paper, the matchup looked good. Bottom of the order, this, bottom of the order, that. Less time through the rotation, this, or less at bats against these guys. Ross Stripling is the bulk man, this and that. Every time it feels like where they've done that situation this year, it turns out to be the worst case scenario. I don't know if it's bad luck. I don't know if it's him misjudging things, but clearly it's not working. It's not. I mean, when you look away from, and we go back to our conversation last week, it didn't work in terms of this the scenario to bring in Dolis for the bottom of the order, and then yesterday where I disagree, and obviously Mark, you disagree with me, is that it's just an overthought thing, and I don't understand the point of it. I mean, I know on paper you're looking at this and that, where you're like, okay, it looks good if everything works out. But nothing's worked out when you say that. Every time this happens, it turns out to go the worst way possible. And I don't know why. And maybe it all is a stretch of bad luck. Maybe I'm overreacting and it's a stretch of bad luck. It could be. And if it is, it's really bad luck, because it just feels like we've been through this time and time again. And it could have easily been avoided if you just start Ross Stripling. And again, with Trent Thornton, you mentioned how good he has been out of the bullpen. We know how good he's been out of the bullpen. He's got a 2.70 ERA. You're just wasting him like that for one inning. I'm not saying, and obviously he is the bulk man in this bullpen. So depending on how Ross Stripling did, maybe he doesn't pitch yesterday, but in the situation where Ross Stripling does struggle, what happens then? And Trent Thornton's not there. I don't like how everything is pretty much handled right now in terms of the opener. And I don't think they should be going back to it. It just hasn't worked out. And I mean, there's times it has, but realistically, it feels like it doesn't work out more times than it does. So Alek Manoah coming up, maybe that changes them now, or they're thinking, maybe that gives them more opportunities and more options. And like I said, with Nick Pearson coming up, now you move Ross Stripling into the bullpen, and there's another bulk guy that can help Trent Thornton. That can help guys like Anthony Castro, or even though he just got back from injury, but I can center this around Joel Payams, Tim Meza, Tyler Chatwood, Rafael Dolis. Maybe that helps the workload with these guys. That Stripling and Thornton can be those bulkmen out of the or out of the bullpen. So that's why it's just a lot of things crumbling down right now. The injuries, we all know that it definitely is a factor. And the one thing that we're forgetting is they're still doing all of this without their George Springer, and we're still waiting on him. I still don't think he's coming back at least until mid-June, because we haven't heard anything about a rehab assignment. We know that it will be heading towards that direction when he's ready. We know he's traveling with the team. We know he's doing running progression, but it just feels like we are still in the early stages of his recovery. And at this time around, the Jays are not going to rush him back, because clearly he wasn't healthy when he came back for this. I think it was just 3 or 4 games, but he hasn't even started a rehab assignment yet. So once George Springer comes back, that obviously will help things, because realistically too, the bottom of the order has just been very underwhelming. And I know there's not much you can do with the injuries, because Espinal, Davis, McGuire, and if it's not McGuire, it's usually Jansen. It's just sometimes that bottom of the order is lacking. And I think there's a situation yesterday where I remember it was Grichuk and maybe it was Hernandez, back-to-back singles. They had runners on first and second with 1 out, and Davis swung on the first pitch, flied out, and then I think it was McGuire who popped out as well. Opportunity gone to cash in runs. Even though the Jays put up 8 yesterday, that's just something that I'm nitpicking at. But either way, they need George Springer back more than we anticipated going back to a month prior. They're really missing these guys. So hopefully when the injuries stop, and because of course it technically didn't stop because we lost Kevin Biggio for 10 days. I know it's kind of one injury, so it's still technically a win, because usually you see multiple guys go down. But Kevin Biggio going out doesn't help, as much as he hasn't been hitting the ball the greatest, and now he's got to sit for another 10 days and try and get going again. And for the people going back to last week too, who want Espinal to play more, well, guess what? Now he's got his opportunity, and it's up to him now. But either way, it was just a bad series overall. And of course, everyone's overreacting. Of course, people can be upset. But Mark, you said it. This team is still it's still a good ball club. It just doesn't have the pitching it needs right now. And how much is it on them? I don't know. Injuries, and there's a lot of factors. We can't forget what disadvantage they have compared to everybody else is, first of all, they're not even playing at home. Like, there's so much going on right now. And when you look at it, one more thing that pisses me off about the Rays is that they can't sell out games at Tropicana Field, but it's okay for them to invade TD Ballpark all weekend. And it feels like you're playing a road game in Dunedin. And that's hard on the players, because all year it's been like that. And the Jays really haven't had a home game. I can guarantee you Buffalo will be better. I know Buffalo also increased the capacity a couple days ago. Maybe this move to Buffalo is going to help them. Maybe it'll help more than we think. And we can't forget the Jays played well in Buffalo last year. And somebody that comes to the top of my mind that hit really well in Buffalo alone was Rowdy Tellez. I'm just saying this move to Buffalo may be a lot better than what people think. It may be under the radar that could boost them. But Dunedin wasn't just the atmosphere, everything about it. There's so much going into this year where it's just been against the Blue Jays. And that's why I'm still on board, Mark. I know people are jumping ship already, which is crazy. And the best part is you'll see them all trying to come back in a couple of weeks when they go on a hot streak, because they will heat up, and we all know they will. And this road trip alone, if you take a 2 out of 3 against New York and you split something with Cleveland, all of a sudden you're a few games above 500 again, and all of a sudden you're within 3 games of the division.
Well, they still are 500 though. Like obviously they were.
I mean, like above 500, yeah.
No, but what I mean is at least they're still in
Yeah.
a relatively good situation. I mean, yeah, they were 6 games over and now they're 500 as it is. They're breaking even, but at least like this isn't a good situation to be in. But if I had to pick a bad situation, I'd pick this one. And there's only so much that you can do when, as you said, Marcus Simeon, he came out actually. I think he said something or somebody tweeted something saying that he went out and said that the Blue Jays really they don't feel like they're ever at home anymore because there's always more away fans than there are Blue Jay fans. And
And Montoyo said something similar, I think,
Mhm.
yesterday.
Yeah, so
It's hard on the
it's a
players.
tough
Like,
situation.
yeah.
Yeah. And also the fact that most or a lot of their key players have been out or are still out. So there's only so much you can do with these awful circumstances. Yes, I think the team it's going to get better and it should be better, but we will see, and hopefully they can turn things around against New York, Cleveland. They get 2 games against Miami. I guess that's a plus, but we'll see where that goes. And it's a tough schedule ahead, but I still think that the team will rebound, especially going into Buffalo, which I'm not sure when their first game in Buffalo is, but that should be a good
That Miami
turnaround for
game.
them. Oh, it is. Oh,
Mhm.
well, yeah. That should hopefully there's a sweep for them there, but yeah, it'll turn around. That I'm confident in.
Mm. Although, unfortunately, Miami isn't as easy to roll over as they have been in the past. They've got some really good young pitching. I don't know if the Blue Jays will be facing Sixto Sanchez in that series, but he's one of the young studs they have. And maybe, as we talk about the trade deadline, maybe a team to target in terms of young pitching to acquire. But, anyways, yeah, on Montoya, like, I don't blame him because he doesn't have the tools available to him to make things work. Like people are like, why are you bringing out Jeremy Beasley? Why are you bringing out Joel Pyamps? Like, why are you using these guys in these situations? Travis Bergen, like he's not a guy who should be in a high leverage situation. Why are you using him here? It's because he has no one else to go to. He doesn't have the tools to use. Like they mentioned this on the Spin Rate podcast from The Athletic. Like compare this to Buck and Tabby having to simulcast on radio and TV. They're great broadcasters. You know, you can disagree with some things they do, especially Tabby says some stupid things sometimes, but they're good broadcasters. But when you force them to do a job they're not comfortable with, like simulcasting on TV and radio, they do a bad job. Like if anyone's tried to listen to the radio this year, it's been horrible. It's hard to listen to because you have no idea what's happening. And that's just because they've been forced into this position that doesn't work for them. It's the same thing with the Blue Jays. They've had so many injuries. They never had much depth at pitching to begin with. And all of a sudden, you're forcing Charlie Montoyo to use these guys in ways they shouldn't be used. You shouldn't have to use Travis Bergen in a 4-3 game in the ninth inning to get out of a jam that Tyler Chatwood created. You shouldn't have to use him in that situation. You shouldn't be relying on guys like in Monday's game. You shouldn't be relying on Anthony Castro, a Rule 5 draft pick, to get you out of a jam in the 10th inning, in the 11th inning. That's not how these guys should be used. It's just out of necessity that they're being used in these situations. So I don't blame Charlie Montoyo for this. If we have to blame anyone, I guess it's Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, but I don't even blame them too much. Like they this team should have done better in the offseason to build depth at pitching, but they didn't. They decided to build depth elsewhere, and that's fine, but we're reaping the punishments for it now. So I don't blame Charlie Montoyo because of that, and especially because of the injuries that they've had to go through to Ryan Barucki. We've talked about it, Julian Merriweather, Anthony Castro before, Tommy Malone, all these guys, Thomas Hatch, who are on the injured list, that would help the Blue Jays significantly. they can't be used right now. So that's why I don't blame Charlie Montoyo. He's just using the tools he has available to him, and it's not working out.
And the last thing too, quickly, if Jacob, if you want to add anything, it's easy for them or fans to nitpick and say this guy should have been in, this guy, but what if that guy, and I guess I'll use Romano as an example. What if he threw 30 pitches the day before? A lot of people don't understand how difficult it could be sometimes to manage a bullpen, and that's where I agree with you, Mark. Is the bullpen management sometimes, or most of the time for me, besides a few other things, is like who else do you want in? Like Joel Pams, for example, that extra innings game on Friday when he came out for multiple innings, who nobody else was like, who else are you going to use? I mean, Dolis pitched the day before, obviously, right? So you don't want to overwork him. Who do you want to use late in the game? Because I don't know, especially when people are throwing 30 pitches the day before, and you want them to burn out even more. Like there's just no other options, unfortunately, and that's why things may lead to a trade. But I still think we're kind of early for that. But I wouldn't be surprised at all, and I think we're kind of all expecting something to happen. But either way, that's where I'm like, you can't really fault them for doing what they are, because you're not going to burn these guys that are pitching 30 pitches. And Joel Payams realistically was available and was the only guy available who was free to work a few innings. And he went out for a few innings, as you guys saw on Friday night.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like no matter who the Blue Jays put in, we're still gonna have to deal with these people that complain. Like, if it's not Joel Payams, it'll be why is Tim Meza pitching in this situation? Or if it is him, then it's gonna be why was Trent Thornton not pitching in this situation? So I it's tough because there are moves that I do legitimately disagree with, but there's also moves that I understand have to happen or had to happen for a certain reason. So that's why I'm not like, obviously I'm vocal about a disagreement that I have with the management, but there's only so much of a disagreement I can have considering they obviously know more than me being with the team every day. So that's where I'm at. Like the bullpen, especially with, like I said, people are going to probably complain either way unless the results are there. And it's just, when the results aren't there, it's tough, primarily because there's not much that Charlie Montoyo can use. Like, I think we talked about it, Mark, on that one game, the stream after the game. Somebody, I think, asked who should have been in this situation or pitching in this situation, and I think both of us were at a bit of a loss because we were just like, I don't know, because there's just no other options, or the option
Who's
that we
not
did
injured?
pick. Yeah, well, and the options that we did pick either pitched that day or pitched yesterday. So it's tough. It obviously it sucks, and everyone wants to point fingers when the team's not winning, but there's only so much you can do when you're seriously injured and there's not the guys that you want available.
Yeah, exactly. And just a little correction: Anthony Castro was a waiver claim, not a Rule 5 draft pick. The point still stands. The Blue Jays got scraps in terms of Payams, in terms of Castro's waiver claims, and they're making do with what they have. Hasn't worked out the past few days, but you can't blame Charlie Montoyo for not having the tools available to him to win. So, okay. So, rough weekend. Hopefully, moving into this series in the Bronx goes a little bit better. We can come back talking on Thursday or Friday about a series win. That would be the best case scenario, or at least a losing streak that has been snapped. Until then, thank you to everyone who listened. You can support our podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/section138pod. You can also rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, just helps spread the word about what we're doing here. You can follow us on social media at section138pod. You can stay up to date with what we're doing. You would have known that Jacob and I were doing a live stream after that brutal loss on Friday, so you could have tuned in for that. So make sure to pay attention to everything we're doing. But until then, we'll be back next time after the series in the Bronx. We'll chat then.